So we are doing chapter 13 again because I think the last session was not recorded. So thank you very much for joining us today. So we're going to go through chapter 13. Before we do that, I'll do a quick summary of chapter 12. So chapter 12 was the conclusion of the Bhakti Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita, the middle 6 chapters. A lot of important teachings on devotional service for us. It went into the details of bhakti and the various stages that one might have to go through to attain pure love of the Lord. And similarly, we also learned that what are the characteristics of an ideal devotee, and Krishna talks about the 35 different qualities that his devotees possess. So the difference is that a pure devotee of the Lord does not look at Lord as just the supreme controller. They look at the Lord as someone who they can have an intimate relationship with. Therefore, there is a profound love that develops in the bhakta's heart towards the Lord until he becomes fully surrendered to the Lord. So bhakti is also not something that you can perfect overnight. Maybe not even in one lifetime. It may take us multiple lifetimes for us to perfect it. But once we reach that stage of not looking upon the Supreme Lord as someone who is your order supplier, and looking at the Lord as someone that you can just love because he's so kind, he's so merciful, then you've reached a completely different stage on the path of devotional service. When you stop asking the Lord for something. Actually, I was reading my notes that I took from hearing other wonderful preachers who teach the Bhagavad Gita. And I came across a note, and I think this addresses maybe a question that came in the morning class. I'm not sure who asked this question. Probably Ravi Prabhu did. My memory may not be fully dependable here. The question perhaps was, okay, if you love God, can you still go to him with material problems? Right? That was maybe the crux of the question. Can we pray for material benefits? And I think the way I answered the question is, you can pray for a material benefit as long as you also ask for something spiritual as well. And in my notes, I was looking through in preparing for today's chapter. I came across a comment or a remark made by one very nice preacher in ISKCON Sydney in Australia. And he was saying, we should not lead a double life in the sense that you approach Krishna for spiritual things, but you try to hide your material problems from him. So even your material problems, you can submit at the feet of the Lord because he is the Lord. He can do whatever he wants with you, and he can change the trajectory of your life. So we should not pretend in front of the Lord. If we have, for example, he was saying, if you have a toothache, you tell the Lord you have a toothache and it's interfering with your service. Please help me, So even your material problems, you can take to the Lord. He can solve it for you. He can change your perspective, even with material challenges that we face. So I thought that was an interesting remark for me to read in the context of the question that was asked, I think, at the morning class on Devahuti's Stuti. So essentially, the point was that because you're developing a relationship with Krishna that is much more intimate, then you are perfectly within your rights to reveal your entire heart to Krishna, including all of your struggles that you're having. It could be material struggles, it could be spiritual struggles. So there's nothing wrong in you pouring your heart out to Krishna. Because that's part of having a wonderful relationship with the Lord. Because Krishna wants that personal connect. It's not that when you go in front of the Lord, you pretend to be perfect in front of Him, because obviously Krishna is going to see through that. And who are you fooling but yourself? So essentially, in chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna was saying that Bhakti Yoga is not only powerful, it is also very practical. It is also fulfilling, it is also very satisfying. Our desire is to have a relationship, because through relationships we experience happiness. So there is a subject, there is an object, and then there is reciprocation between the two. And that is essentially the relationship between the Bhagavan and Bhakta in the form of bhakti. And the question that Arjuna asks is, after having seen the Vishwarupa Darshan, tell me once and for all, which is more perfect? Those who are engaged in Bhakti Yoga, who are worshipping your Acha Vigraha form, or are those who are focused on your Brahman feature, the unmanifested aspect of you, which is perfect? And the Lord immediately says that those who fix their minds on my personal form, and they're always engaged in worshipping me with great faith and determination, Krishna says he considers them to be the most perfect. It is not to say that if you're worshipping the Brahman feature of the Lord, or the Brahmajyoti aspect is what you're aspiring to, it is not to say that it will not yield spiritual merit. It certainly will. But the Lord also says it is a challenging process, it is a slow process, and it offers limited rewards. And in the table that we saw, we also learned that the realization is not complete. In the sense, your spiritual journey has not reached its culmination when you are aspiring to merge into the Brahmajyoti of the Lord. And the Lord is reminding us in the 12th chapter that the Lord Himself is a person, therefore He has a personality. We are persons and we have personality. And that's where the rasa comes. The richness of that relationship exists because both Bhagavan and Bhakta each have their own personalities. So, I don't think I posted the theme question of the Bhagavad Gita there. But since this chapter was just 20 shlokas, from shlokas 13 to 20, the Lord talks about the 35 different qualities that His devotees possess. That these qualities makes the devotee very dear to the Lord. For example, if you can broadly categorize these 35 qualities, the devotee's attitude towards themselves, in the sense that there's no sense of pride or there's no sense of attachment to anything. The devotee's attitude to others, so there's no envy or enmity when dealing with others. The devotee's vision of life itself. They see life as being fully positive, equipoised, satisfied, and finally, the relationship that the devotee has with the Supreme Lord. They are faithful to the Lord and they're very absorbed in the Lord. So, in the last shloka of the 12th chapter, Krishna says, those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So your spiritual journey can begin anywhere. Your spiritual journey may not necessarily take the same path like anybody else, but it begins with sadhana bhakti until it leads to bhava bhakti and then finally to prema bhakti. There's something also called samanya bhakti, which is mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion by Srila Rupa Goswami. So there is samanya bhakti, there is sadhana bhakti, there is bhava bhakti, and then there is prema bhakti. So there are so many layers to unpack even with bhakti yoga. So today we're going to begin the final third section of the Bhagavad Gita, which is appropriately titled Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga. So the first 6 chapters were Karma Yoga, the middle 6 were about Bhakti Yoga, and then the final 6 is about Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. Now, why after talking about Bhakti Yoga does the Lord really have to speak about Jnana Yoga? If Bhakti Yoga is the culmination, should that not have been the climax of Bhagavad Gita? Should that not have been the last chapter? Saying this is the topmost and that's it, end of story. Well, because Bhakti Yoga is, such a relishable aspect. The question is, what is the knowledge that you need to perform Bhakti Yoga until it reaches its zenith in Krishna Prema? So even the Jnana Yoga section cannot be separated from Bhakti Yoga, as you will discover as we go through these final 6 chapters. So chapter 13 is a little technical in nature because it's introducing the concept of Prakriti to us in a little bit more detail. So chapter 13 also begins with Arjuna asking questions. So what better way to learn than to ask questions? Right? And so Arjuna asks some intelligent questions. So the 13th chapter is divided into broadly 4 sections. It begins with the 6 questions that Arjuna asks. Krishna talks about how one can attain wisdom. Krishna talks about the difference between the soul and the super soul, and what is actually realized wisdom. There is wisdom that you read, and then there is wisdom that you experience, and the two are different. So you could say one is theoretical knowledge and one is practical knowledge, right? So that is how you could look at this. So let's begin with what is Arjuna's question. Arjuna uvacha prakritim purusham chaiva kshetram-kshetrajna Vibhaga etad veditum-ichchami jnanam jneyam cha Keshava. Arjuna said, "Oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." So there are 6 terms used here: Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, and Jneyam. So these are the 6 terms that Arjuna is asking Krishna to explain to him. So Prakriti is broadly said to be material nature, and the Lord has already said that this material nature is under his control. Purusha. When we use the word Purusha, it actually translates to one who enjoys. In the material world, Purusha and Prakriti are known to be in common parlance as male and female. Prakriti is feminine, Purusha is masculine. But there is a deeper meaning here. Who is the real enjoyer? who is the real owner and who is the real proprietor. In the sense, because Krishna created your body and you are part of Krishna from a spiritual standpoint, then Krishna is the first enjoyer. You are the secondary enjoyer. So essentially, Arjuna is seeking clarity on the difference between Prakriti and Purusha. As Purusha, we like to enjoy. And we have the right to enjoy also. But our enjoyment lasts when Krishna is involved in our life. Otherwise, any other enjoyment is very temporary and it's very fleeting. Then, the difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetra means field, and Kshetrajna means knower of the field. So this field is equivalent to this physical body, both the gross body and the subtle body. Therefore, who is the knower of the gross body and the subtle body? Again, there are two people. One is the Jivatma and the other is Paramatma. Then there is knowledge and the knower of knowledge or the object of knowledge, you could say. So Jnana is knowledge. Jneyam is the object of knowledge. And the object of knowledge is always going to be Krishna. So you could say before you discover Krishna, you have to first discover yourself. And therefore, self-realization and God-realization kind of work in tandem. But Prabhupada says, when you focus on God-realization, then self-realization is automatic. So we do it in the reverse. So we get to know who is God, and by getting to know who is God, we also understand who we are, which is we are just servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. So let us see a little bit more detailed way of understanding this. So there is a field, there is a farmer, and there is a king. So if we had to match what is on the left side with the right, the field here would be the body. The farmer here is the soul. And the king here is Paramatma. That means the king owns the land on which you're producing food. But you are the secondary owner as the farmer. But the land itself belongs to the king. You may have leased a piece of it to grow your crop. Similarly, if you look at the analogy on the left and compare it and align it to what is on the right. So Krishna as the king or as the Paramatma owns your body. Therefore, he is the primary owner and enjoyer of your body. And you are just the secondary owner and enjoyer of this body. That means we are meant to please Krishna first with our body. And when we please Krishna, automatically we will also become enjoyer and owner. Because the ultimate owner is Krishna. So it is this relationship between body, soul, and super soul or Paramatma that is actually being discussed in this chapter. And the body is created by Prakriti. So if we use this body, this precious form of human life, to make advancement spiritually, then you are using the land for the most beneficial crops, right? So as a farmer, I can decide what kind of crops I want to grow on my land. Cash crops, non-cash crops, etc., etc. So similarly, as a Jivatma, I can use this Deha to get me the maximum benefit or to lead myself to ruination also. That's my choice. So if you are a wise Jivatma, then you will use this body properly. Just like a farmer will use his land to grow crops that is going to produce good benefits for him. But at the same time, if the law of the land says, growing, what is that, poppy plants can lead to, big drug business. So you're violating the laws of the land, but because it's materially beneficial, if you continue to do that, at some point or the other, you will get caught. So that means Krishna is expecting us to use this body according to his laws, not according to what is our desire. So the government will also support you as long as, the king will also support you as long as you use your land to grow the kind of crops that the government authorizes as legitimate utilization of that land. So that same analogy can be applied to the human body. Krishna expects you to use this human form to satisfy him and please him, and therefore go back to him. So if you had to understand the difference between Atma and Paramatma, so as Atma, we may at best, we may only understand a little bit about ourselves and how we operate and why we operate the way that we do. But Paramatma understands not just you, but every single soul. So therefore, he is the supreme owner and controller. And he will always be in a superior position to you, no matter how much you may try to think otherwise or pursue a path that you think leads you to becoming God yourself. So that's the difference between Paramatma and Jivatma. So wisdom is understanding the difference between the body, the soul, and the super soul. This is jnana. Now, jnana means the object of your love, the object of your knowledge, which anyway Krishna will talk about in the 15th chapter. The whole purpose of doing all of this is to understand who is Krishna. So again, if you look at these shlokas from 8 to 12, Krishna is going to talk about bhakti. Even though we are in a Jnana Yoga section and Sankhya Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita, how come Krishna is connecting everything back to bhakti? Because this is the jnana that is required to perform bhakti. So the most important qualification Krishna is saying is ananya yogena, uninterrupted and unadulterated bhakti. As a matter of fact, Narada Muni defines bhakti as follows. Krishikena, Krishikena, Krishikesha, Sevanam, Bhaktir, Uchyate. So Hrishikena, meaning using all of the senses that you have. Hrishikesha, he is the master of the senses. Hence he is called Hrishikesha. Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. We are supposed to use our senses, perform bhakti to conquer the master of senses, Hrishikesha. Therefore, it is uninterrupted, unadulterated bhakti that Krishna is talking about in this shloka. But to do that, Krishna is coming back to the topic of a spiritual master very briefly, because he's already talked about it in the 4th chapter. Acharya Upasana, acceptance of a recognized spiritual master, is an essential qualification. Most important is we have to perform bhakti. But to perform bhakti, we need also a teacher who can guide us. Among other qualifications, essentially, Krishna is defining wisdom or knowledge here. And the way Krishna defines wisdom and knowledge, he says everything else that I have not spoken about, he says it's all ignorance. So that means Ananya Yogena, uninterrupted, unalterated bhakti, Acharya Upasana, which means accepting a guru, and some of the other key qualifications, Amanitvam, humility, Ahimsa, non-violence, Atma Vinigraha, self-control. So Krishna is talking about some of the qualifications. So from here, we're going to go to Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is a beautiful exchange between Prahlad Maharaj and Lord Narasimhadev. And what is Prahlad telling the Lord? My dear Lord Narasimhadev, I see that there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance, not caring for the big cities and towns. They go to the Himalayas or the forest to meditate with vows of silence, Mauna Vrata. They are not interested in delivering others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone, leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to shelter at your lotus feet. So, there is a concept of two types of devotees, even among bhaktas. One says, I am only interested in saving myself and myself alone. Therefore, I will do bhakti so that I can go back to the Lord. So, some of these bhaktas, what do? They may go off into the Himalayas, into the caves, into the forest, to do their own meditation, to practice their own vows of silence. So, Prahlad is telling Lord Narasimhadev, such bhaktas, they are not interested in delivering others. In the sense, they're not interested in helping others. Their first focus is on themselves, rescuing themselves. And Prahlad seems to be rejecting this process of going off alone and only worrying about saving yourself. And in the meantime, what about all the other fallen souls? Hence, Prahlad is saying, as for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone. If I want liberation, I want to take everybody with me also. Otherwise, who's going to care for the people who are suffering here? So essentially, Prahlad is saying, I'm going to preach. And I'm going to continue to preach so that others can also connect to Krishna and be saved. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to shelter at your lotus feet. So the difference between these two is called Bhajananandi and Goshtyanandi. A Bhajananandi is interested only in his own bhajan. He's not worried about another person is suffering and millions are suffering. He's thinking, I am suffering, let me first save myself. That is enough. A Goshtyanandi is thinking, I know I am suffering. I'm in the process of saving myself, but if at all I can help save others, then let me do so also. Because why should I be selfish and only worry about saving myself? Why can't I also help others go back to Krishna? Such a person is called a Goshtyanandi. So that means a Goshtyanandi is necessarily a preacher. He preaches this message far and wide so that more and more Jivatmas can get connected to Krishna and have an opportunity to go back to Krishna at the end of this life. So such Goshtyanandis come in the form of Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada. They only come to rescue you and me. They are not even worried about themselves. They are worried about so many Jivatmas, so many souls are suffering, and they know that the suffering is going on because the Jivatma is disconnected from Krishna. And they are thinking out of their immense compassion and mercy. if I can connect even one Jivatma back to Krishna, then maybe I can call myself a human being. I can call myself a bhakta of the Lord. So their main focus is on rescuing others. And in that process, they are ready to undergo and undertake any kinds of trials and tribulations to help others. So these individual personalities are actually coming in the form of acharyas. So actually that is the whole reason that acharyas come, because they feel such deep compassion for the jivatmas that are suffering. So our ultimate goal is to reach Krishna. But to reach Krishna, we need to have a bona fide guru in our life. And of course, we already know we are supposed to serve the guru, submissively ask questions, and finally surrender to guru. Because when we surrender to our guru, it pleases Krishna very much. So if we are ready to learn and do so with a great deal of humility, then certainly success is guaranteed. So here, Krishna is talking about the object of knowledge. Jnana is defined, wisdom, and wisdom is defined in terms of accepting guru, in performing bhakti, in having humility, fortitude, etc. So what is jnayam? Jnayam yattat pravakshyami yajñātvamritam ashnute anadimat param brahma nasattanna saduchyate. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Krishna is saying Brahman is subordinate to me. Here, Brahman is referencing the Jivatma. So sometimes Brahman is also referencing the Supreme Lord, but the proper terminology would be Param Brahman. So here Krishna is saying the Atma is beginningless, which means it never took birth and it doesn't have a date of death either. It always exists. As long as Krishna has existed, the Atma also exists. That means the Atma is as old as Krishna. But the Atma is subordinate to me, Krishna says. It lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So there is no cause and effect for the Atma. The Atma experiences cause and effect through the body only. But the Atma by itself is Satchidananda. So the Atma is always dependent on Krishna. It is beyond the cause and effect of the material world. It is anadi, no beginning and no end also for the Atma. Now Krishna will talk about the super soul, Paramatma. Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charamevacha sukshmatvat tad avijñeyam durastham chantike chatat. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. It seems like a puzzle also. Far, far away, he is near to all. Well, physically speaking, the Lord is always in the spiritual world. He never leaves it. But the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, is also there within you as Paramatma. He is far away from those who are not interested in him. He is very near to those who are performing bhakti. So essentially, Krishna has no material senses. His senses are always spiritual. Hence he is called Kshetra-Kshetrajna. He is the origin of all senses. He is the master of all senses. He has no defects. And he is seated in everyone's heart. Now, how do you understand all of these topics that Arjuna has asked questions about? Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra-Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Jneyam. Well, even to understand these complex topics, Krishna says best you perform bhakti. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam jneyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etat vijnaya madbhavayopapadyate. Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. So Krishna is saying you perform bhakti, all of these topics will become very clear to you. So essentially, instead of trying to be the controller, if we give control of our life to Krishna, it will give us real happiness. But see, our relationship with Guru and our relationship with Krishna can be quite different. So Ramanujacharya had many disciples, and when there were death threats on his life, Ramanujacharya was told to leave Tamil Nadu and enter into, perhaps in those days, I don't know, Karnataka. So anyway, when a spiritual master travels, it's the disciple who takes care of the luggage, the suitcase, and what is put in and how it's taken care of. Because that's the relationship between Guru and Shishya. So when Ramanujacharya traveled, he used to take his deities with him. And one day, Ramanujacharya told his disciple, pack my things. We have to move on from here. And his disciple said, okay. And he had packed everything. And Ramanujacharya asked, okay, where are my slippers? The disciple said the slippers are inside the suitcase. And Ramanujacharya got very upset with his disciple because his padukas were kept side by side with his deities. The padukas that Ramanujacharya wore on his feet were kept next to the deities he was worshipping. Now, at least in our culture, we can understand this is a certain no-no, right? You don't keep the deities next to your slippers. Definitely we will not. There is a special place, there is a puja room, there is an altar, it's nicely decorated, it's taken care of very nicely. So Ramanujacharya chastised his disciple, saying, don't you understand that this is the Supreme Lord? How could you even keep my padukas next to my worshipable deities? To which the disciple gave an answer that was a revelation to the Acharya himself. The disciple said, you're right. I don't know God. You may know him. I only know you as my spiritual master. So therefore the padukas are more precious to me than the deities, because I only know the padukas. These padukas belong to my spiritual master. The deities belong to you. So Ramanujacharya was astounded at this deep realization of the disciple. For the disciple, the spiritual master occupies a predominant role in a disciple's life, more so than Krishna himself. Because it's through your love, affection, and service to your spiritual master that actually Krishna will reveal himself to you. So the more we are dedicated to serving our Guru, the more Krishna will help you understand who Krishna is. So that's the unique relationship between Guru and Shishya. That is why Krishna is emphasizing having a Guru in your life who can guide you, but not just someone who you can take mantras from and then disappear and not follow any other instructions. The objective of having a Guru in life is to follow his instructions. That's the whole purpose of having Guru. Without Guru, there is no Krishna. Without Krishna, there is no Guru also. So there is a wonderful pastime of the Nagapatnis in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Kaliya Leela, Krishna is dancing on Kaliya's head and almost kills him, makes him unconscious. And Kaliya happened to have a lot of wives, and his wives were considered to be great devotees of Krishna. And when their husband was almost killed, they come and offer prayers to the Lord. Stutis. And they tell the Lord, we know that our husband is envious, is ignorant, he wants everything for himself, there's no end to his greed. But after all, he is our husband. We don't know what he has done to deserve your lotus feet to be placed on his head, in the process of you dancing on his hoods. We know for a fact he's not done any bhakti at all. But still, for your lotus feet to touch his hoods, we don't know what transpired. So therefore we think, my dear Lord, you have done this out of your causeless mercy, because Kaliya did not deserve to have the Lord's lotus feet touch his hoods. Not once, over a long period of time, the Lord was dancing on his hoods. At that time, the Nagapatnis plead with the Lord and tell the Lord, see, if you kill him, we will be forced to live with other snakes. It's not a very comfortable situation for us. But at the same time, the Nagapatnis tell Krishna, my dear Krishna, we have made our request, but you do what is right, both for us and for Kali. This is the nature of a devotee, being completely surrendered to the Lord's will. Even though the devotee made a request, the devotees here, the Nagapatis, made a request to the Lord to save their husband. So see, that is a material desire, to save one's husband. But the spiritual desire said, you do what you think is right for me, and you do what you think is right for my husband. So both the material desire and the spiritual desire came together in one prayer. Save our husband was one request. The second request was, we are completely surrendered to you, whatever you think is right, both for us and for Kaliya. We will accept it. This is the nature of how a devotee has that intimate connection with the Lord, revealing their hearts to the Lord, and at the same time surrender to the Lord enough to say that, I don't know, even though I think protecting my husband is good for me, I do not know what your plan is for me. So being that surrendered. So what is realized wisdom is covered from shlokas 20 to 35. So on the left hand, you can see if you are with Krishna, you're always happy. But if you go into the bar, you may think you're happy. It is just temporary happiness. So let us see what Krishna says. So the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So Krishna is saying the reason that the Jivatma is suffering is because the Jivatma has come in contact with Sattvagun, Rajagun and Tamagun. So Krishna has introduced the topic of gunas in chapter 13. And he will continue to talk about gunas in chapter 14, in chapter 16, in chapter 17, and chapter 18. That means this topic of understanding Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun is so important that Krishna spends many shlokas talking about the influence of the three gunas on the jiva. Yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. Krishna is saying, my own Amsha comes as the super soul to occupy the body. So Krishna is referencing to the Paramatma in third person. He is not saying, I am Paramatma. He is saying there is one more transcendental enjoyer who exists as the overseer and permitter. Permitter means if the Lord has to permit your desires, then that is sanctioned by Paramatma. And of course, as Paramatma, he is the witness to everything that you're doing. So you cannot escape. So essentially, it is the Jivatma who has a desire. If Paramatma sanctions it, then Prakriti simply implements the Lord's sanction. So we have already covered this earlier. Krishna is just reiterating this process of how it is the Jivatma that is ultimately desiring. Paramatma does not have any desires. It is the Jivatma that is deciding their own trajectory. So here in the shloka, Krishna is saying, Kshetra-Kshetrajna Yorevam Antaram Jnana Chakshusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Viduryanti Te Param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage and material nature, attain to the supreme goal. The central point here is Krishna is saying, without me, your knowledge also is of no use. Whatever knowledge you acquire, material knowledge, etc., has zero value unless Krishna is in the picture. So, in this way, Krishna has answered the 6 questions that Arjuna has posed him in this chapter about Prakriti and Purusha, the difference between them, Jnanam and Jneyam, knowledge, the object of knowledge, and Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetra is the body, and Kshetrajna, there are 2 Kshetrajnas. There are 2 knowers of the body, the Jivatma and also the Paramatma. Okay, we'll pause here. Are there any questions pertaining to this particular chapter?